Hey, what's going on? My name is Sandy, and I kind of willed myself into the ability, or the opportunity, I should say, to interview Pickles, the leader of Warpigs. They've got, specifically for Reforger, four servers, uh, two of which are absolutely, bar none, the most popular servers in the game. If you haven't ever played on a Warpig server, then you have pigeonholed yourself into only ever playing modded servers, and you are absolutely missing out. Great balance, strangely, constantly active admins. It's a fantastic time. I am Sandy. I'm a bit of a nobody. Played competitive and squad quite a bit and bounced around a little bit and wasn't quite happy with that experience or the game. So I kind of moved over to Reforger, and now I am trying to kind of recreate the competitive community in Reforger. And I seem to be the only one that's doing it, sadly. So if anyone out there is interested in doing this, that would be fantastic. And Pickles?
So thanks for having me, Sandy. It's an absolute privilege to be here, and I'm really excited to discuss what we're going to be talking about relative to Warpigs, Armour as a whole, the community, and the future.
Yeah, for sure. So just for people that might, for those odd ducklings out there that haven't actually played on a Warpig server, or maybe someone, there's a considerable bit of new player uh, sentiment. That doesn't make sense. A lot of new players to the game. Um, can you kind of explain the differences between the four servers that Warpigs has?
Sure. So to begin with, you've got NA1 and NA2, which are our vanilla servers, and the workhorses of our community. NA1 being our flagship server, very popular vanilla setup. We deliberately made that new player friendly because I appreciated that when the game went cross platform, we were going to have a lot of players coming in from other games with completely different mindsets. And what me and my community brought was experience of running armor free events, armor free training, and armor free operations. So we were able to bring that experience and help new players coming into the community. And that's something I wanted to do because I knew that it was potentially going to be problematic and we were going to have people coming in looking to play the game and looking to play the game as it was designed to be played, but not necessarily having a place to do that and not necessarily having a community to teach them that. So I decided with NA1 early on, it was important for us to have that very welcoming, very obvious focus on new players because people coming into the community, new people are coming in, they're the lifebloods. I say that usually people either pick up this game or drop it the first time that they play it. Some people will not appreciate that this is a completely different game compared to your Call of Duties, your Battlefields. It isn't as simple as running around with a gun and shooting people. It's a lot more multi-layered than that. There's a lot more to consider. And I appreciate, even myself as a veteran armor player, I felt overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that you had to learn. And just with conflict alone, like that is an incredibly complex game mode that requires a lot of teamwork, tactics, and coordination from your teammates. And without that, you're really going to struggle to achieve your objectives. So that was the focus of NA1. And I've decided with NA1, it's an Everon setup. Everything is absolutely vanilla. It's on a north south divide, and we've got increased XP. So that created a massive draw, I think, and has consequently resulted in NA1 being consistently in the top five of the most popular armor servers on battle metrics. I'm very proud of that. I'm not going to lie. That's a fantastic achievement. But a lot of that has been down to a very, very dedicated team of staff and admins who have supported the Warpigs community, given up a lot of time to really make sure that these servers are as fun and entertaining as possible for the majority. With NA2, I wanted to change it up slightly and have a more of a milsim focus because, again, I think it's important that as a community we cast our net wide and we make our brand of gaming accessible to people that want to play milsim, that want to play chill sim, or just want to play, with their mates and just have fun as new players. So we already were focusing the servers for like two large groups of people, and that has enabled NA2 to become again very popular. Not as popular as NA1, but we do see it consistently filled every night. It just drops out during the day, during the quiet hours. NA3 is our Vietnam server that we're currently working on. It's down at the moment because it's being ported over from a European server. And the reason I've taken it off European is because predominantly Warpigs is a West Coast community from a West Coast of America. So a lot of my guys were struggling with the pings, and that was causing a bit of an issue with us seeding. Our expertise don't really lie in the area of mods and modded servers. We're new to that, and we're kind of trying to explore that and seeing what works and what doesn't work. Whereas our vanilla content is arguably some of the best and most popular content on the game of Reforger. So when I looked at setting up all these various servers, it was important to me that we were kind of encouraging people from different parts of the community to come in, and then we were encouraging them to interact with the other servers as well. And what we're finding is people are coming out of their shell a little bit, and your new player server, they started out just playing that server, and now all of a sudden they want to try the milsim. So we step it up a level for them, and they've got that opportunity still in a kind of relaxed environment to learn a little bit more about how to kind of use a radio, how to navigate, how to communicate effectively, how to work with other squads. And there are all these little areas that need to be kind of understood before you're really able to fully step out and enjoy the kind of milsim experience. That's why we run a lot of training events and operations. Often not in the public eye. Some of our training events are public, some of them are hosted privately behind closed doors, because we are currently in the process at the moment of developing a series of milsim units, plural, within Warpigs itself. These units, the idea behind them will be to develop and basically develop a bespoke way of playing that really, they'll be looking at the map, they'll be looking at what the map needs, and they'll be responding to the needs of that battle. And one of the things that I've noticed in our public servers is the Americans really struggle to win. So we're looking to increase the amount of teamwork and communication and effective communication that we're seeing on the public servers by going away and having these bespoke training events where we're practicing our skills and developing a real professional tone to our communication, a real appreciation for how it is to work with other units, and how we can affect the map and change the outcome of the battle positively. This all takes a lot of work, as I'm sure you can imagine. So that is essentially the 4 servers of Warpigs as they stand currently, but there are intentions to expand further. So that's where we're at the moment with the servers.
Yeah, and we'll touch on specifically what you're aiming for with NA4 with that PvP, PvE sort of dynamic, because I think that that's genuinely, as someone that's done Milsim and Arma 3 and Squad and a couple of other games before, I think that that's something that I've always felt is lacking. But again, we'll kind of touch on that later. I just wanted to kind of accentuate how good of an experience NA1 and 2 is real quick. If you're a longtime fan of NA1, I mean, both servers tend to run 20, 30 person queues. I think that that's effectively just I don't think that's just because they're at the top of the server list and people click on the thing with the high number. I think that that's genuinely a curated experience that people want. If you have only ever played on NA1, I would absolutely recommend giving NA2 a try. It is I'm not saying that NA1 isn't a fun experience or that you can't have teamwork on NA1 by any means, but NA2 is just a phenomenal experience that I initially when I started playing the game, you get team killed every 3 seconds. You have people that will watch you run across the field, and once you get a certain distance away, they get hit with amnesia and they kill you because they didn't think that you were a friendly. NA2 is just a glorious time, and you'll get if anyone that's listening operates their own small milsim groups. I talked to someone a couple of weeks ago that did they've got an armor focused milsim unit, so ordinarily they go through and do their trainings and deployments on weekends as events against AI, but by day they play on Warpigs occasionally, and I keep trying to tell them like, hey, that would be fantastic if you just kind of centered most of your training around a PvP sort of aspect, and you find that a considerable number of those types of players are already on NA1 and NA2. I remember this one fight that I had on Military Hospital on the north and west side of the map on NA2. This was well before I'd committed to playing on Warpigs by any means or calling it a home server. But me and a couple of buddies who had all just recently brand new to the game, each one of us, we didn't know each other. It was our like christening match. I think we'd met each other the day before, and this was like the first time that we'd hop on to play together. And we sat down on Military Hospital, and unbeknownst to us, ended up sitting through like a 40-minute wave after wave of Soviets coming in and landing in helicopters on the beach and coming in from different angles and different snipers up on the hill and stuff like that. And ever since then, those kind of challenges and experiences are really, really common on NA1 and NA2 in a way that I wouldn't expect is really common on any of the official servers by any means. And two, like they only just recently opened up the stress testing servers, the 128 person servers for North America. Like, when is that? So I highly recommend, if anyone hasn't already played on NA1 or NA2, you should seriously look at making that sort of your mainstay server. I can understand if the queue is a little high, that might be a little off-putting based on how much time someone has to play, but the queue doesn't move at super slow, sluggish speeds, and it's absolutely an experience that queue exists for a reason. I knew that NA3 was Vietnam, and it's funny because when I initially started playing, I told myself like, well, I don't want to play on modded servers or different maps. I want to, as a new player and as a competitive player, I want to understand the base game meta and sort of dynamics and systems before I go and play on someone else's like completely customized different damage types and completely reworked, medical systems and stuff. And I found myself really enticed and immediately fallen in love with the NA3 and NA4 servers. So I'm waiting for that NA3 server to pop back up for Vietnam. I definitely know that all my guys are clamoring at the opportunity to do Vietnam. Everyone's just an old head. To ask specifically about NA4 real quick, probably not real quick. You had kind of touched on it when you were explaining the differences between the servers, but I wanted to kind of dive into what your aims are for it. Is the intent to have like one faction, Blue 4 is home to a milsim unit for a night or doing their training or whatever. So like, I should say that ordinary milsim is effectively like one side slated against an enemy team of AI. But that's kind of not what you're going for by allowing the Soviets to exist as an ordinary faction in the midst of that. So are you aiming for like a milsim, primarily like an ordinary experience, or rather a conservative experience, plus kind of randoms in there? Or I would compare that to like Wasteland, but with Zeus instead of preset randomly generated missions that can like populate on the map.
As things stand at the moment, I'd say we're still in the very much early days of development around NA4, and where we want to finally take things with the mods. Once we have an idea of where we'll be going long term with that, we're gonna have a better idea of how to really lock down some kind of story to what we're doing. Because when people play these servers, a lot of people are playing Armor for the experience. Now, you might go and play Armor for 10 hours, and in that 10 hours, you might kill one AI or one person, but you'll have one heck of a story to tell people of how you got to that kill. And that's Armor. You know, you're reading a story here. It's a long, long story, and it's not going to be over quickly. That's the difference between this and like your Call of Duties, which is a little bit like watching Netflix. It's instant gratification. It's about going out and stacking the kills, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not what Armor is. So what I'm looking to do long term with the modded server is create some kind of environment that A is new and innovative and original, because I want Warpigs to be original on some level here. I don't want us to really be just copy and pasting what other people have done. And what I want to do with that, and by being original, to get us there to be original, like a big thing that what I want to do is to develop lore into it. And you mentioned just before the interview, you are looking to do something similar with your servers. And I believe that creating lore and having, say, for example, extra content out there, like we've got a Warpigs News Network team that go out and role play being new combat correspondents. We've got a newspaper that puts up information about what happened that last night in the server and the latest events up to date. All of this combines together to create all this awesome content, which you post up on socials, and people absolutely love that, because that's how you engage with your community, you know, and that's how you show to your community that you genuinely care about the individual, and you want to showcase all the awesome stuff that all the individual members are getting up to. So that's one of the things that we're looking to do here, is have player driven lore. And what I mean by that is we'll have an operation, there'll be a HVT that needs extracting. As part of that event, we'll throw in a curveball or something like a civilian situation where, you know, there's this reports of suicide bombers, or there's reports of hostile civilians, but there's also friendly civilians. So we'll multi-layer it. And what that gives people is that kind of, it just takes away from just being like more clinical and linear, and being like, go to point A, kill the bad guys, stay there and defend it, come home. We want it to be more multi-layered. One of the things that I've been doing is increasing the amount of specific little side events that we've been doing. Now, you've got the overall conflict game mode, the back and forth between the Russians, but we've also got the local FIA forces that are getting involved, hitting our convoys, hitting our bases, and just being generally pain in the backside through the use of guerrilla warfare. And that creates like a separate army apart from the Russians, which is very conventional, very much heavy artillery, cruise missiles, APCs, tanks, etc. And you've also got this kind of underground war going on, where the FIA, who they represent currently on our server, the Gogoland Freedom Fighters, they're out there. They haven't got the same resources. They've just got little mortars and a lot of explosives and small arms. So they need to make use of that. And the way I kind of reflect that is I change up their tactics, and I make their tactics hit and run. I'll have the guys getting hit with IEDs. I'll have the guys getting ambushed, but then the ambushers will just melt away into the local civilian population. And then you've got to really test your guys, you know, because part of this training is that we want them to be kind of like focused on what they're doing. And if they engage a target without positively identifying that target, and that target turns out to be a civilian with no weapon, then that's going to have consequences on the operation and the mission that you're currently undertaking. And the way the GMs are trained, we're going to make it a lot harder for that objective to be achieved, because you've just killed the mayor, or you've killed the civilian, and now all of a sudden the civilian population is rioting, and that's completely thrown your objective out the window, and you've now got to deal with that. So we want it to kind of be just give it that other element of realism and immersion to really capture people by including this lore, by increasing the diversity of the kind of objectives we're throwing at players, and moving away from this linear approach of going to point A, defending it, or going to point B and killing everyone and going, we want to kind of make it something a lot more interesting and something a lot more deeper than that. And we're still in early days because I'm putting together this new community, Warpigs. Okay, it's not a new community, it's 4 years old, but it's new to Reforger. And a lot of the people that we're working with, they are still getting used to working in large scale events and operations. A couple months ago, we did our first Clash of Clans event, which was a 64 versus 64 milsim competitive event where we played against Operation Treadstone. And that match was amazing. From Warpig's point of view, the guys were absolutely on point because they trained and we developed a tactic and an overall strategy, and everyone had roles within that. On that time, I was one IC on the field. I had a HQ team with me, including radio operator and plus 2 people that was just constantly looking at the map. I also had shotgun security, so I knew I didn't really have to make all that many decisions. My RTO was pretty much running everything from a tactical point of view. I would give him an order. I'd say, we need to be aware of the left side of the map. We've got 2 flags under attack there. And he would either allocate QRF or he would allocate our frontline resources, which were usually in vehicles, to go and secure those objectives. And this top-down structure, alongside having really good use of communication, having dedicated RTOs in each squad, and having clear, concise communication being sent, along with having our radio call signs all on different channels, this made the overall smoothness of the operation a lot. It just went so well as a result of this, and we were really able to respond quickly to the situation on the map. And Treadstone did a fantastic job. The event went really well to begin with. We had a few issues towards the end, but it was a great opportunity for us to learn what works and what doesn't work. One of the things that I can say now, having put a number of large-scale competitive milsim events together, it's not an easy thing to do. But with people like yourself, who are very dedicated, it's going to be, I think, and your experience is going to be very useful over the coming months in seeing an increase in this, definitely. One thing I would say is that it's really good to see the sort of communities coming together. And one thing I really want to do is I want to work closely with other communities of varying sizes, from the bigger ones to the smaller ones. I've run a small community and I've run other smaller communities for many years. I've run many projects and seen them fail, crash and burn. So I have a lot of empathy and appreciation for people that put themselves in this position of, basically setting up these communities, because they're providing a service to people, and people genuinely get very deep into these communities and can take them very seriously. So it's important that we're reflecting that, and it's important to me that I'm reflecting that and that I'm showing that back into my community, that those guys they've given their passion and their time to me. Then I want to be able to reflect that back to them. And that doesn't just stop at my own community. I want to help the other communities out there, because I know what it's like to struggle. And even if you're not struggling, I think it's just good for communities to have good synergy. It means that we can all work together. There's multiple ways that communities can work together. One of the ways that we work with other communities, for example, is by sharing intelligence. Not with every banner, but with some bans. If it's a particularly specific type of TOS violation, then we may pass that person's username onto other communities, and then they'll be permabanned from those other communities. And that seems to be developing really well, because as with all games, it's the internet, and unfortunately you've got a lot of people out there that want to play the game and just enjoy it. But then sadly, you've got a lot of people out there that want to see the world burn. I'd say that they're in the minority, but there's still enough of them to cause an issue. And it only takes one player in an 128 player lobby to cause an issue. And unfortunately, as I'm sure you've seen on many occasions, if you've got no admin available or anyone able to respond to that, then you are going to kind of have to put up with that player unless they get votes kicked, which can't always happen. So again, many considerations, but definitely I think working with the other communities in the future, working in NA4, increasing the amount of lore that we've got in the game, training up our game masters to provide this diverse, fluid experience. These are all very important factors for us to consider in the future, and for any community leader or unit leader to also consider themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things real quick because I know that there are the people that might see this video might not even own Reforger. They might be currently playing Squad as a main game, and they might not kind of understand some of the terminologies and things that we're specifically referencing. For competitive milsim, I think that for a lot of games, and certainly if you don't have any interest or experience, hands-on, I should say, with competitive. Everyone thinks that it's kind of CS:GO, but for these realistic milsim or military shooters, which is what milsim is supposed to mean, there are also milsim units, but that's effectively like a separate entity or a reference. For instance, the people that play competitive in squad, right? For a long time, there were effectively two different versions of the game that you played. If depending on your goal set, right? If you were a competitive player, you're jumping around all over the place. You knew how to min max the stamina. So from the average player's eyes, you could just sprint infinitely. You would 360 no scope people like across fields and stuff like that because you were dealing with people that had enough time in the game that they had doped in exactly how they needed to turn and how they needed to crouch and when they needed to go crouch to be perfectly lined up and where they needed to be. And then if you wanted to play the game as a casual person or a milsim person, you were effectively playing a separate game. Reforger doesn't really have that dynamic going on because they've refined the game to a base level, which is definitely ironic. I'm not saying that it's like the most refined product in the world by any means. The game crashes sometimes in weird ways. Some of the vehicle mechanics can be angering a little bit. I'm not allowed to drive vehicles to this day. If anyone catches me, they yell at me, just because they'll flip on just nothing. But the base game is so refined in the interactions and the movement and the gunplay, which ironically enough is Squad did an infantry combat overhaul update in October a couple of years ago, and it completely changed like the fundamental way that the weapons handled. So it was a little bit more like kind of RNG in a way, and a bunch of people ended up leaving Squad. If those people are listening to this, you need to buy Reforger because Reforger doesn't have any of those issues. Please, dear God, watch a video of someone shooting. It's a dream. It's a consistent, beautiful dream. But anyways. When he's talking about competitive milsim, or when I reference competitive milsim, we're just talking about high level and coordinated play within the game. The game is so refined that there aren't two different versions that you're playing. You just have a person that has good knowledge and sort of like knows the meta of, well, the Soviets have this objective, so they're going to push in from this area. I can sit in this tree line. There obviously there's a little bit of a difference between like if you're in a milsim unit and you have rank requirements, you have to say yes sergeant, no sergeant, but that's for the most part that's not kind of what we're talking about. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of feedback because I know for a little bit of your explanation on like your aims with NA4 when you said competitive milsim, a lot of people hear the milsim word and they're like tune out. That's not the dynamic that we're talking about, and I highly recommend that people kind of give it a little bit more of a glance. Something that really excites me, of course, then bias as a competitive player, because my buy-in to the game is just hedonistic at this point. Something that really impresses me and excites me is this PvP and PvE dynamic for milsim. I've done proper milsim on everywhere in the spectrum with a bunch of different games, Arma 2, Arma 3, not Reforger yet, but PvP is like a no button. Like people do not want to mix PvE and PvP. And I think that that's an absolute shame on basically every level. I think that how you train and how you move in an area, how you wedge a corner, how you preemptively maybe throw a grenade into a compound that you know enemies are in, there's no civilian threat, for instance, or there's no concerns of like, well, our friendlies in there, yes, no. I think that should have an opportunity, maybe not all the time, but I think that that should have an opportunity to be tested against players because that's when you're going to find out whether that actually works. And I've seen it so often, even in the milsim that I'm in right now for Arma 3. You effectively, from a Zeus, like controlling the enemy from an admin cam perspective, basically, you see that guy's just not seeking cover at all. He saw an enemy, he just fucking stopped in the middle of an open field, and he's just plinking. I think that it's a unique way to actually balance and test those things out. And in the taboo-ness of it aside, I think that it's a fantastic idea on paper to actually feed back into the normal servers. You start people in new players that maybe play on NA1 a couple of times. They see a banner announcement or something like that. They join the Discord. They find out about the milsim stuff, and you effectively can use NA4 as almost like an inherent training tool that they can then bring those skills back into NA1 and 2. Better radio callouts, better understandings of the map, or like how to evaluate the area around them. And that's as a by no means do I have 3,000 hours in the game, but that is what you that is high level play. It's not knowing absolutely everything on the map, it's just knowing enough to be able to evaluate. There's a berm in front of me, maybe I use it. Okay, I killed a couple of people from here, maybe I move away, and maybe I bounce off of the people that are pushing this objective with me. Maybe we alternate sides, or maybe we come in from a different angle. We've tried this attack from this tree line a couple of times too many. Maybe we wrap around from a different side. I think that PvP element in NA4, just on paper, has a fantastic potential to cyclically, that's not quite the word, but in a cyclical manner, improve the NA1 and NA2 experience in a way that I've just never seen anyone try to tackle before. And I think that it wouldn't even require all that much work. As far as like looping those people back into NA1 and NA2. So that's really, really fantastic. Would you, just to kind of bomb you with a question, would you ever see NA4 being a proper, like, you've got a Blue 4 milsim group, and then you've got a Soviet milsim group to, like, really get that, you died because there was an enemy squad that communicated effectively and had, like, their own limitations and procedures and stuff? Would you ever see that for NA4?
So with NA4, there's so much to unpack. There's so many possibilities and so much potential. You mentioned a few points there I want to touch on. You mentioned how historically people are it's like you either love or hate milsim, and it's the same with PvP. You either love or hate PvP, and the two historically don't blend together. No one's ever, to my knowledge, ever really done kind of a competitive milsim PvP kind of like situation that's actually kind of blown up and been a thing. Like you say, it's either PvE or it's PvP, and never the twain shall meet. I saw that potentially as a gap in the market, and just because it hasn't been done previously doesn't mean to me personally, and I'm sure it means the same to you, that it can't be done. And I think when if almost in a way when something is more of a challenge, or someone turns around to you and says something can't be done, or that you just get this vibe that people would say that, you kind of want to do the opposite and try your best to kind of prove them wrong a little bit. And I have to admit, like, there's a lot where we've got to decide on what we want to do. What you're asking there, particularly about having dedicated Op4 Blue 4 units, that's actually something that's already in the works. Unfortunately, I can't put too much information about Op4. In fact, actually, we may or may not have Op4 units. There's going to be some redacted content, unfortunately, that I can't touch on.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
we actually, yeah, in with role playing to one side, yeah, we're going to be having a dedicated Op4. We're going to be having a dedicated Blue 4, and I think those units will be a good opportunity for those units to play off against each other a little bit, and it will also give us the ability to internally compete, which we kind of want to do as well. My background in Battlefield esports, that's always been something that kind of stuck with me and something that I wanted to repeat and something I wanted to do again. Battlefield was never unfortunately going to be the game to take competitive, but I think with Reforger, what we have here is a different opportunity, a completely different development team, and definitely a lot more potential to actually developing something here, really. Because, at this point, we've got the ear of developers. We can go onto the Discord, have that conversation with them, and sort of like inform them and help them sort of like hopefully in a way, because again we want to work with the developers at Bohemia, and we're a small community compared to some of the bigger communities out there, but evidently we're running the game that they designed, we're the vanilla version, we're running one of the most consistently popular servers for that. So the opportunity, and if we've got any Bohemia developers listening at the moment, the opportunity is always there for us to go away and have a conversation. And because I've definitely got some thoughts myself on admin tools and ways that we could like constructively discuss it and how it could be improved. Not to say that it's not fit for purpose. It works well, but there's definitely things that I think where it'd be good for the development team and the community to work closer together on, and we're definitely kind of looking to make that happen at some point. One of the things that again that we sort of like really like to focus on is going back to like what you were saying before about having that draw to NA4. We want to bring that lore up. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is we'll obviously have the PvE PvP element, but we also want to introduce actors into the game. So for example, we've got the Warpigs News Network, which I mentioned formally, but we also have people that are being trained up at the moment to act as civilians in various situations. And I know it sounds a bit crazy that we're giving them training, but we do like to give training to people for pretty much every role that they have. If it's a staff role or an admin role, we like to train people up because it's important with an organization of this size that you have continuity and consistency and professionalism. So to do that, we obviously need to make sure that everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet, as we say over here in Britain. But sorry, I'm going to just ask you to repeat the question again, just so I know I'm not getting off topic here.
Oh yeah, no, I was asking if you'd ever be interested in having like a. That was actually just my initial question. You already answered it. Was Milsim against Milsim, but I just to add in my own piece from a competitive perspective. I know probably a couple of people are cringing at like, oh, actors playing as civilians. Would you rather just have like an AI statue that you like move around like it's a tripod and then you set it up? Wouldn't you rather have like someone that actually moves around and talks to you and maybe divulges intel in certain areas in different ways and stuff? So just wanted to say
And just to
something about
touch
that.
on that, because I think you've just covered that point extremely well. To reinforce that, what we're trying to do here is create a living, breathing environment that when the player walks into the world for the first time or the 100th time, something's going on, something dynamic is happening. It might be that they're at the arsenal tooling up, and an AI convoy rolls past them with like 20 trucks in it, and then everything's chill, no significant action, so everyone's relaxed. And then bang, that convoy gets ambushed, and next thing you know, you've got a mass cas and what we'll do is we'll go through the full procedure of that. We'll expect our guys to tip out, respond as QRF, set up a security perimeter, and then triage and treat the casualties, extract them from scene via whatever the most appropriate means, and then bring them back to base. And that's just an example of one situation, but we want our guys to run through it as if it's the real deal. Now, we do appreciate, and one of the things that I do say to people as a civilian myself with no military experience, milsim is not the military. Milsim is not the war. Like, milsim isn't real. And it's important. I've come across both civilians and ex and current serving that have sometimes struggled to keep the two separate. And one of the examples of that is, and we all like to reflect and see what we could do better. One of the things that I did with my unit was we relied very heavily on ex-military people to do our training, and we took that training to some next level. We were kind of going far too deep with it. And when you've got civilians, like, you've got to understand that there's got to be a balance. First of all, you've got to actually, the tactics that you're utilizing and the strategy that you're utilizing has to translate to the game. It has to be something that you can actually utilize. So going out there and expecting people to have a perfect fire team, everything's perfectly positioned, it's just not going to happen. People, unfortunately, are going to kind of like struggle to develop like these really highly choreographed formations, or like you can take it to the next level during when you're doing quick reaction during or whatever it's called, not quick reaction, when you're doing CQB and you're doing building clearance. Again, like, as long as there's some kind of formula to it, and as long as you guys aren't tripping over each other, crossing each other's lanes, shooting each other by accident, you've got to kind of dumb things down from how things are done in real life, because if you try and take that real life vibe into it, it's not going to work, and you're going to end up putting some people off, because people don't like to be made to feel dumb, or like to feel like failures. We play this because we want to feel good, and I'm not saying that we make shit easy for our guys. Like, we don't. We make shit hard for our guys, but we also want to kind of give people an honest opportunity to actually achieve stuff. So, we tried to kind of balance it, and that we do that across the board with our mission planning, with our executions of our missions. We try not to overwhelm them and destroy them outright with AI. It's so easily done. It's really easy to just accidentally drop artillery too close, but you want to create that immersive living, breathing environment. So if you're in a war zone, there's going to be artillery, there's going to be explosions, there's going to be shrapnel, there's going to be the smoke and the acrid stench, and all right, you're not getting that, but that's where your imagination fills in. And that's where, like, for me, the reason I don't play games to go around shooting people. I'm terrible at it. My kill death ratio on Battlefield has consistently been 0.6 for the last 20 years. I have no issue with that because I'm a damn good medic, and that's how I got my rocks off on Battlefield, was by reviving my teammates and like actually maybe tipping a win for our team. And it's the same with Reforger. It's like, when I'm playing Reforger, 90% of the time I'm in my own head, just like imagining, like my brain's just like, I've got a very hyperactive imagination, and I just get like fantastic imagery in my head of like what this would look like in real life and how you'd smell and everything. And thankfully, I have never had to experience real war firsthand, and I don't care if this makes me sound like a coward, but I hope I never have to. I genuinely hope I never have to. I've had a lot of friends that have been in war environments, and to say it's messed them up is an understatement. It's like that. That's just the physical injuries, but the mental injuries as well, and the mental trauma that comes with that, which brings me on to another little thing that I want to touch on, which is that when we're creating these communities and when we're creating these environments, we want to do it in a way that's positive. The world's a very negative place at the moment. There's a lot of bullshit going on for people to have to deal with. So when they're logging in, we want this to be a positive, inclusive environment, not inclusive in the cringeworthy way. I get that, like, you know, that word gets thrown about and in a real kind of stupid way. But it's important to me that people come on and, like, I was bullied like really severely as a kid. And I remember what it was like not being included and not having a place to come and lay my head and call home and a community. And that's where I wanted to create Warpigs and have that environment, because there's a lot of people like killing themselves because they haven't got that sense of belonging. And I genuinely believe that, like, being part of a community, whether it's a community in real life or whether it's a community on the internet, gives people that sense of belonging. And for so many of us, like so many of us are, like, have been lost, and are lost. And if we can create an environment where people can come into and they can just chill out and game and have it like be super immersive with a really solid group of like 2,000 other people who are like their best mates, that live all over the world, it's like really fucking good. Because I've seen people like looking out for each other. I've seen people going from one state to another to check on a member's welfare. I've seen people buy loads of games for each other because, you know, they want to support each other. And if someone's having a bad day, then, you know, it's an easy fix. Well, not an easy fix, but it's an easy way to show them that they're cared about, and that, you know, there are people out there that would miss them if they're gone. And sometimes that's all that stands between someone killing themselves and someone not killing themselves. So our awareness around mental health and just being just a chill group of people to be with and a chill server to be on is so fundamentally underpinning for me and Warpigs consequently as my foundation. Um, I really want Warpigs to just be like free of the bullshit, free of the people that are out there just to see the world burn. And unfortunately, there are more and more of them these days. And as I say, coming cross-platform, the game has just exploded in popularity and in maintaining that popularity, and that's great. And we are 110% here for those new players coming in, picking up the game for the first time, and, you know, looking to go deep. But when we don't tolerate people that are just here to see the world burn, you know, I try to teach my guys that when we're adminning, we should always look to de-escalate situations verbally. We should always try and get you know, we don't want to assume shit about people, but, you know, that person might be a cool person. They might be having a bad day. So if it's just not a major TOS infraction, then we'll either give them a warning or we'll try and talk to them, de-escalate. If people have an argument, same thing, de-escalation, de-escalation, de-escalation. But, and it's a big but, there is a line in the sand, and we are not here to be trodden on either. And people have to understand that actions have consequences. And it frightens me just how many people there are in the world these days that are grown ass adults that do not own their shit. Like, if you behave in a certain way, if you say certain things, or if you try to disrupt the game, or if you hack and you cheat, like, I'm sorry, but you know, I'm sorry that your parents fundamentally failed you to raise you in a way that where you are prepared for the most basic fundamental principles of the world. Like, and if you go around acting like a bit of a knob, then people unfortunately aren't going to tolerate that. And, you know, for far too long, gamers have had to put up with bullshit, and we just don't tolerate it. If you can come in here with a kind, positive attitude and you're willing to learn the game, then we are here for you. But if you are one of these people that just thinks you can get to people by trolling them, by bullying them, by belittling them, by being brash and horrible, like, then it's just not the community for you. You're not going to last. Like, we've got too many admins that are active. We've got too many regulars that are active. Someone will see it and someone will report it. You know, we can't have admins on all the time. Even with a team of 50 admins, it's impossible. But even then, we've always got regulars in, and there's always someone willing to report TOS violations. So my advice is, guys, go out there, chill out, enjoy the game. Make this a place where you can actually have a positive experience. Don't be one of those people that just wants to see the world burn. I see you all out there on Reddit. It's quite amusing to me that we've got all these haters and that we catch so much hate. This is my first opportunity to speak publicly about it. It doesn't bother us in the slightest. It's good for us. Any news is good news. If you want to moan a bitch about us, that's fine. Do it. It's good for us. We love it. Carry on. Try harder though. But no, seriously, we're not here to get beef with people, but we're also not here to be trodden on. It's that simple. You know, we have our ways and our means. We're a we're a law-abiding community. We're here to kind of look after our own, but we won't allow people to come in and try and destroy that sense of well-being and harmony that we have. And that to me is very important because I've been a part of gaming communities for 23, 24 years. I've run gaming communities. I know what makes a community tick. I know what can break a community. And I've seen so many examples of just literally a very small minority of toxic people coming in and just destroying the hard work of a large group of people. And that's something I ain't willing to compromise on with Warpigs. And thankfully, Warpigs is the first time that I've ever had a project go, this successful and to this size. But it's been off the back of many, many, many years of rinse and repeat of building up a community or being a part of helping that community build up and seeing it sort of crash to its floor, crash to the feet, and then sort of moving on. But where it's led to where we're at now, basically. And what I want to do is I want to use this to help people. There's, as I say, the streamers out there. Warpigs is a variety game and streaming community, so we're not just in Arma or Forger. That's just one of the games where we host servers on. But we're also big into streaming and getting our streamers supported and networking. We've got a lot of people that come to us as new streamers and then build themselves up, and then we'll have more new streamers develop, and then those guys will get help from the people that are also walking up that ladder. Climbing up that ladder. So when I'm running Warpigs and I'm kind of like making my decisions about stuff, I always keep this in mind because first and foremost is the happiness and well-being of my members, and whether I've met that member face to face or whether I know that person or whether it's like my best friend, like I want them all to have the best experience possible. I've a lot of passion for this. A lot of time's been spent to get us to where we're at now. It isn't just me. My team is fantastic. You mentioned it earlier. Sometimes you've got to kind of go through people and find various posts for them, various roles for them. They don't always work out. That's where you've got to kind of work with that person and work with other people to get the right people into the right roles, because again, knowing your team and knowing their strengths and their weaknesses is a very important part of leadership and being able to kind of manage them, or not manage them but lead them into the future. And again, I'm very keen to be a good leader, an effective leader, and part of that is different leadership styles. There are times when you need to be the autocrat and you need to be the decision maker because the community needs a sense of direction, and it needs someone who's confident, who's got vision. But you also need to have an element of democracy about how you're approaching things. People want to feel included, like they essentially, they're investing their time and their passion. They want to feel like they have ownership of that community and that community is a part of them. And these are all the things that you can do as be mindful of when you're leading your community. Is if it's a decision, put out some polls, get some feedback, and we'll do this all the time with the servers. And we're constantly looking at the feedback and suggestions channel to understand what it is that our players want to play, what mods work, what mods don't work, and where they want us to go in the future. And a big part of being a leader, I find, is listening, and just you're always listening to what people have to say. And so many people come to you with ideas and strategies, and I wish I could remember them all. Probably like yourself, we've had to set up a whole staff structure within Warpigs over the last 6 months, because again, with an organization on this scale, especially if you've got, to me, it's important that we maintain high quality over quantity. And I always want our members to have a good time and feel safe. So, there's a lot that's involved in making that happen. It isn't just a simple case of having an admin team. You've got to train these admins. The admins have got to have oversight. So all of a sudden you've got to have senior admins. They've got to have oversight. Then you've got to have all these kind of this chain of command, because if I were to just run this community on my own, well, I just wouldn't be able to do that. It's physically impossible. There's too many different moving parts. I personally like we've got admin tools that we use that are completely separate to Armor, to our admin our servers. I haven't even learned to use those tools because on the principle that I cannot learn everything about this community and learn all the little nuances about it. Where I come in is I just try and keep everything on point, everyone together, and provide that figurehead sort of status really for people to sort of collect around for the staff. But this is where we're at now. It has been a collective effort, and I've got too many people to thank one by one, but I would like to take the opportunity to really thank my admin team, my senior admins, my staff, and my senior staff, my department heads. You guys have just been amazing. Putting up with me and my bullshit that takes some doing. But yeah, with a lot of passion comes a lot of nuances. You'll have to understand that.
No, for sure. And I think that leads to a really quick, easy intro, or rather, next topic of some of the things that Bohemia absolutely kind of needs to improve with the admin game. I think that, kind of like you touched on and I touched on initially, what makes Warpigs so great is the actual admin presence. The fact that, on any given day, you can, if you're very curious about it, I would assume that it's the same on console. We're PC people, but you can go hit oh god, I guess like the start button. Basically, bring up the sort of menu that you would go into to see your options. There's a player list option there, and anyone with a little it's like the little Zeus symbol, but an I next to their name is an admin or a game master. On any given day, Warpigs has at least 2 people on the server at all times, and that's both for NA1 and NA2. So, absolutely crushing it. The thing that bothers me, kind of base game, and it's easy to fix, I would assume, said every person that's never coded before. How are the servers that don't have 50 something admins to rotate through
I
surviving?
mean,
Right. I
I
think about like what is the experience like on the official servers where there's no real admins, right? Like there's no in-game log that, so that way you can do anything retroactively, right? Like if there's a bunch of team killing that goes on the Soviet side and an admin comes in, but no one team kills after that moment and no one recorded anything, then there's effectively nothing that you can do. But I feel like if the match has been going for that time, you should just be able to go in and hit a button in like admin view and see the log of, and maybe you could filter so that way it's not cancer, like deaths and deconstructions and stuff like that. I consistently, even just on my little admins or on my training server, right? Like I can't. Not that you would, I guess, want to do this in a public match, but the admin tools are so restricted that you can't adjust people's ranks. Like in my little training server, we have to spam take radio relay stations and then turn them back over to the other side and then take them again and then turn them back over to the other side. So you can't even do like ordinary base concept stuff.
so I'll be honest. I can count on one hand how many minutes I've spent in a Armor Reforger public server. That was all the experience that I needed to know that experience was not for me. Unfortunately, I don't think public servers are a very good look for Armor Reforger, and I do wonder how many people must come in, have that experience, and then walk away. Where you see the Armor truly come out is in the community servers, and there are so many great communities and so many great community servers out there being hosted at the moment of all kind of variety that is just incredible. Some of the ideas that these guys have had out there, coming out there, and it's definitely something that I want to focus on. One of the possible areas that I'm looking at for NA4 is to throw a jungle map on it and basically make it Rhodesia. So I know Rhodesia is like not a very common one that comes up, but it's a very popular one amongst the Milsim community. So I know that would be quite a big draw. So that's just one of the considerations I thought for NA4. But just going back to what you're saying about the admin there, and this is one of the areas where I would say to Bohemia, we need to kind of work together. You guys could learn a wealth of information from speaking to people who admin on a regular basis. I'm sure the devs themselves have their own servers and they're probably admins and they've got their experiences, but getting with the community and having that cut discussion and opening up the discussion to the wider community would be a fantastic idea. I have to say that the default vanilla admin is not the easiest to use. It's quite frustrating, and if we were left to just managing our servers with just the admin tool that we're given, uh, we wouldn't be able to admin them as well as what we do, because one of the ways that we're able to admin and be effective is that if we receive an evidenced report of a TOS violation, and that TOS violation, it comes into one of three categories. It's either disruptive to play, it's hacking or cheating, or it's a TOS violation in the context of utilizing TOS banned words. Then we will offer either a 24-hour, 7-day, a 2-week, a 4-week, or a permanent ban based on the level of that infraction. We will always give people the opportunity to appeal a ban. Doesn't matter what they've done, they can come in and they can appeal a ban. Some people, no issue. They come in and they'll put their application in, they'll follow the process, they won't be emotive, they won't be abusive, and you'll have no issues. Other people come in, had it today, guy just came in instantly, like going 100 miles an hour. Tried to de-escalate him, keeping it chill, wouldn't calm down. So unfortunately, he talked himself into a perma ban. We're human beings, and we're not here to be spoken to like aggressively or like in a way that where people think they can like bully us. It ain't gonna happen here. It's just I've told my team to be very much strict on that. We don't appreciate bullies. We don't appreciate people that try and throw themselves around and try and act the big people, because it's just cringe when it's like when you're doing it on the internet from the safety of your computer screen. It's like it's just cringe. Like go and act like that in real life and see where it gets you. Like you wouldn't, because someone would batter you, and unfortunately some people probably do act like that in real life and probably do get battered for it. But that's just the world, and actions have consequence. But not that I'm advocating violence in any way, shape, or form here. I'm just stating a matter of fact, a course of events. So when it comes to the admin, we definitely need to kind of have easier access to players in the server, like be that searching mechanism within the admin panel itself. We need to be able to search for players, because right now being able to have them to scroll through the list of players is painful, especially if you've got someone that is spamming on the mic at the absolute maximum volume. Again, I talk about inclusivity. There are a lot of people that play this game with neurodiversity, myself included, and it's really kind of like when you get people screaming down the mic or just spamming certain sounds, it's just it triggers like a real anger response in you, and you don't want that. You're there to chill out, you're having a good time. So the people that like go for that like attention seeking, like look at me kind of approach to life, that again, they don't last long in our service, because we just don't tolerate the immature bullshit. Like if you want to come in, have a good time, do it, but don't come in to cause issues, because we'll just get rid of you. And when we're executing these decisions, like it makes it a lot easier for us if we've got the basic tools. Like as I say, for me the biggest thing is a search mechanism in admin. But off the top of my head, I can think of a number of situations I've been in where I've been scrolling through that list, desperately trying to find someone who's just really just disrupt. Maybe they're just getting into arguments with people and they're just really disrupting the server. So we really, we don't want to admin. I genuinely don't log in at the beginning of a game and think, oh, brilliant, I can't wait to kick someone from this server that I spend £200 a month paying for. It doesn't make sense for us to sabotage our own servers. That's why we've got the appeals process, and that's why we go above and beyond to be transparent in our investigations process. We're thorough, and we only act on evidence. Like, we at the end of the day, I've got 50 admins, and I've only ever had to remove 2 admins for abusing their admin. And don't get me wrong, our admins sometimes have a bad day. They make mistakes. They get stressed themselves. It's not easy being an admin. It's actually quite unfun, and it stops you from being able to just play the game. And we're not here to punish our admins if and when they make mistakes. We expect people to learn from them. We don't want to see repeat mistakes, and we're very specific with our training, with the admin training, what we tell them and the way we expect them to conduct themselves. You know, these when we it's very important that they understand that what they're doing is highly visible. There's a You might be beefing with one person in that lobby. There's 127 other players out there that are watching that admin. Now, if that admin gets stressed or is seen to be getting stressed, or that admin gets into arguments, then that's not a good look for us. And we don't want that. In the situation where people are having arguments in chat, I tell my admins to remain silent. I do not want them to get into a shouting match and start shouting over people. That's not a good look for us. We always want to maintain some level of control here. And at the end of the day, we always have that ultimate control, because if someone is being that disruptive, that abusive, or causing that much of an issue, then we will remove them. And being able to remove players retrospectively when they're no longer logged into the server is also an essential tool that we need in vanilla. Again, that's how we do it with our own. We've got our own tools made by our own developers, but having access to that in game, or some kind of mechanism where you can look and retrospectively take action against a player, that has been essential to us being able to get rid of people who are, disruptive, etc.
Yeah, especially
So
since most people that
yeah,
team kill, they'll kill 7 people and then immediately leave the server.
yep, hit and run.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to happen. The game is very popular, and there's week in, week out, there's between 17 and 30,000 people generally, unless there's something like a spike or a drop. That's the kind of player average, the minimum, maximum. So there's a lot of people that play the game consistently, and I get deep into it. And Arma has this beautiful way of drawing people deeper and deeper into it. You mentioned it before with, you come into NA1, you think, oh, brilliant, great. But then after a few months, you're like, oh, I kind of want that next step up. And you're like, all right, try this NA2 Milsim, Warpigs, brilliant. Tactics Teamwork, same thing, brilliant. And then they're like, oh my God, this is different. And like, let's do this and learn this. And then, next thing you know, they're attending your training events or your unit operations. And then finally, they're one of your crew during the Clash of Clans events, where you're going full force 64 versus 64 against another community going Milsim. That is pretty much the tippity top of it at the moment. I'm also hoping to introduce large scale real time events. So I'm going to be doing the Battle of Iadrang Valley, which I'm sure you're familiar with, 1965 November. The Americans went in to the Iadrang Valley to engage the MVA and VC, and it was an ambush, and resulted in the film We Were Soldiers, great film, but also the book We Were Soldiers and Young Ones. It's always been a passion of mine to recreate that event in the largest scale available to us, which will be 128 players, all on one side, all working with units in a cohesive, coherent manner, all under one leadership. We're going to reenact that battle in real time, so it's going to happen over the course of 3 days, and we're kind of hoping that we're going to be spreading this out to other communities and giving them slots where we'd ask that they kind of like fill in. And we're hoping that we can keep this 128 player game going, this event, for the full 3 days, whilst including real kind of events from the battle itself, and it's a great opportunity. I'm a historic World War II reenactor as well. That's one of my other hobbies, and I love educating people about history. It's a passion. I love history. It's always something that's interested me. But I think it's important. I see it as like a mantle that we need to pass down to the next generation. And one thing that these kids aren't going to learn about World War II is they're going to learn it in a classroom. So when they go to a reenactment event and they see the explosions and they see the weapons and they see the uniform and they're talking to the reenactors, that those kids are really, embracing that, and that you can see it, that they're going to take that on and become interested in history themselves, and maybe that will be them stood in a World War II uniform in 10 years, 20 years time, talking to some kid. And because it's important that we don't forget our history. And part of me does feel that at the moment there is kind of like a bit of an agenda out there to kind of forget history. And, history will teach you everything you need to know about the world and everything that goes on. Like, nothing's changed about the human race. Nothing's different nowadays. We've just got technology. Things seem very cyclic in history, and you can definitely learn a lot from it. And it's a good way of learning how to cope with life as well. So that translates over into what we're looking to do here, with Reforger as well. And I mentioned, obviously, we've got the Vietnam server we're hoping to open up soon, on on East Coast NA. But we've also got these big events where we're going to need 128 players on the field at the time, but we're going to have to keep that up consistently for those 3 days, and it's going to be going day night. So these are the kind of big end goal operations, and the Clash of Clans that I have in view for my particular community, and any community that's willing to get on board with us and do events with us. We're also willing to go and support their events and their communities and what they've got going on. One of the areas that we do struggle with sometimes is getting into other community servers, and that's something that I am trying to improve on. We definitely want a Warpigs expeditionary force that's out there kind of representing Warpigs and being the kind of liaisons with these other communities, both on and off the field. So yeah, these are definitely all the considerations that I've got for the future.
You said nighttime, and I got excited at that. Ooh, fine nighttime connoisseur there. Something that I just wanted to wrap back around real quick because I'm shameless and I feel like it's relevant with the admin comments. Something that really puzzles me coming from Squad into Reforger, and I feel like it's not exactly stealing, more like borrowing a good idea. If you just wink wink nudge nudge, Bohemia devs, just see kind of how it's done right there. Something that I think would help considerably with like the trolling aspect or the admin aspect is you can't kick people from your I always want to say squad because of squad, but you can't kick people from your fire team as the squad lead. So if you have that guy that's spamming his microphone in your squad, you can't do anything about it, even to save the people in your own squad's ears. And something else that kind of bothers me on a similar page is I feel like it'd be really easy to institute hey, when you first come into the server, it makes you join a group to even get past that screen to be able to spawn. Why?
That's a terrible decision by the devs.
Eh,
Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah. I think as it stands right now, but what if, in my mind, I'm thinking, squad, you effectively have to do a similar thing where you can spawn without being in a squad, or you can just make a one-man squad, and then you effectively just become your own squad lead, and then people can fill it in over time. And it works really well if you have something specific that you want to do. But effectively, why not just maintain that requirement to be in a group? And I guess that kind of doesn't make sense on a paper perspective because you would have to then automatically get merged into someone else's group if you didn't have one. But I feel like if you're not in a group, then maybe you just don't spawn with a radio, or there's something, and then that person just doesn't even have an opportunity to then. Or I think that the radio is really just the underpinning piece, or maybe because those people will oftentimes then also be the team killers that just fuck around and do whatever they want. But maybe if you're not in a squad, maybe if you're not committed, for squad, if you go to spawn in a vehicle, for instance, you have to ping your squad lead for approval or denial. Maybe you can't pick up a weapon if you're not committed to a group. And then you can't
definitely have some kind of limitation within reason. I think definitely. I think just going back to what I was saying, just briefly on the point of view of automatically getting put into squads. I understand probably why the developers chose to do that. I definitely think the squad system does need to be looked at. I know they've got the new leadership model that's going to be getting dropped at some point in the future. That is something that I feel is going to really change the whole dynamic of conflict. Anyway, I think it is definitely going to hopefully improve things where you're going to have like an AI default commander that's going to assign roles, but that can also be taken over by a human player. That's one of the areas that we really fall down on at the moment because there isn't any mechanism for there to be a commander in it. As things stand, yes, people can kind of take charge, but they're not really emboldened with the tools to do that. And what they need to really, really be careful about here is they need to really encourage players to follow those points within the game that need to be followed. So, for example, a player needs to join a squad. A player needs to request an order from the commander. The commander needs to then assign that order, which is then accepted by the squad. The squad leader then disseminates that squad order to his squad mates. His squad mates then accept the order. They then go and execute the order. They then get an exponential payout of XP. That will
Yeah.
drive people to follow the rules. So what we need to see from that is a dynamic that really kind of gets people on board, because Battlefield did a similar thing in Battlefield 3. It didn't Battlefield 3 and 4, and it didn't work very well because it was glitched. If it had worked well, it would have been like a really effective system, but 9 times out of 10 when you assigned an order, the order glitched and it didn't send. But it's this kind of driving people, like encouraging people to kind of like it's not even encouraging, it's just giving people structure basically, because that's where the game really falls down at the moment, especially for the US side. In Unfortunately in our servers, like I don't know whether this is an issue that's consistent with other unit leaders, but consistently on the US side, generally I'd say 95% of the time the US lose. And yes, that's a multifaceted, complex reasons to why that happens. But the main causes are that a lot of the new players tend to levitate towards the US side. This means that generally that's where the issues are, that's where the toxicity is, that's where a lot of the kind of people aren't really they're new, so they don't really understand the nuances of Reforger and the difference between this and say Battlefield or Call of Duty. So by default, a lot of your experienced veteran players will then play on the Russian side, which, side note, really frustrates me. That's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast. But it means that you've got this skill deficit massively in the favor of the Russians. Then you take into consideration that the Russians have got better armor, they've got better weapons. Most of the vehicles are rubbish, but they've got the Mi-8, which is just like a kind of a warship in the sky. I mean, 90 missiles, really, guys? Like, is that really? Are we going to do that? Okay, but then up against the UH. So yeah, there's things that are within our control, and there are things that are out of our control, and there are things that will change, and there are things that won't change. But I think overall, the direction of the game right now, their decision to introduce this extended kind of schedule of releases that they didn't initially plan on doing until the game hit major kind of success, it has been like very helpful. And for them to decide that they're going to be introducing electricity, dynamic bases, the commander, that is going to be really interesting to see how that affects things, because as with all change, it can sometimes not be well received. And obviously I am kind of like a little bit worrying every time that we see change, because when it comes to NA1 and NA2, we're pretty much just going to leave them as is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're doing well right now, so they'll stay as is. It's the other servers that I kind of worry about, and getting the modded server right, but making it our own unique experience. For me, it's not about quantity. It's not about seeing that server being full all the time. It's about us being able to put together really good quality events that really ties the community together, really promotes the tactics, the teamwork, and gives these guys that outlet to, be pushing professional communications and be showcasing, their kind of newly learned skills, because we'll teach them. We're not going to throw people out there. We'll give people the training, and that training will be delivered by a mixture of civilians and either active serving military or ex-serving military. But we'll always make sure that we're balancing that training right and getting it at the right level for people. We don't want to overcook the pudding here.
No, for sure. Well, that was kind of it for all I had on topics. I appreciate your time, and I'll love kind of doing these interviews until probably the day that I die, which is probably going to be at the ripe age of 48. Um, but I know that, like I said before we started, my guys are going to be super excited to kind of get this sort of background and stuff, and um, I I look forward to what is probably going to be a couple of different podcast inclusions, and probably, honestly, another interview in the future.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing this podcast grow. It's fantastic to get in at the ground floor. You've got a knack for this. Your professionalism, your tone, your questioning, your ability to actively listen. It's all definitely commendable, and I look forward to being involved in this again in the future. And I would like to thank you guys for listening. And I apologize, I do not do short answers.
Nobody wants short answers anymore. Nobody. The long answers are the fun ones.
Well, thank you. And yeah, this has been brilliant.